The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and a big welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gemma De Silva, joining you from Enscape, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. So we're going to get into the presentation very soon. We have a lot of great content to share, and I just wanted to say that if you have any questions that you'd like to ask during the webinar, then you can send them over via the chat pane, and we'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A. Now, let me introduce you to our speakers. First up, we have Matt McMullen, who is an award-winning architect with over 34 years of experience in the industry. Matt is the Executive Director of Art of Construction and thrives on discovering new and vibrant technologies, processes, and delivery methods for implementation into the AEC industry. Let me just advance that slide along because it's not changing. There we go. Next is Scott Hicken, who heads up Art of Construction's content and multimedia creation. Scott loves to inspire those in the building industry to look outside their normal information silos and grow themselves and their business using new technology and through their professional networks. And thirdly is Emily Monarez, a certified interior designer and workplace consultant at Steelcase, who has worked on various project types, including hospitality, multifamily housing, and corporate headquarters, and also has experience in master planning, workplace strategy, and change management. What a great speaker lineup! So I think it's safe to say that everyone here has been impacted by COVID-19 in one way or the other. And before I pass over to Matt, I'd just like to ask you, our audience, a couple of questions. So up on your screen, you're going to see one of two polls. And the first question I'd like to ask you is, are you currently working from home due to COVID-19? And you can click on your screen now, yes, no, or other. Love to get an idea of what your situation is at the moment. So I'll give you a little bit longer to vote there. Okay, so let's close it out and have a look, share with everyone here. Yeah, no surprise there, 90% of you are currently working from home. That's a big number. Okay, let's just run one other quick poll. Have you experienced disruption to your practice or your business due to the pandemic? Yes or no? Again, if you could just quickly vote, and we'll have a look at the responses there. Wonderful, let's have a quick look. Yes, a massive 81%. Okay, thanks for taking part in those polls. Good to get an understanding a little bit more about our audience today. Let's dive into the presentation. And Matt, sorry, I'm going to hand things over to you. Thanks very much.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We know that whether you call it uncertain times or whatever, it is definitely something that the majority of us have not experienced before. So thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. What we're going to talk a little bit about, and I know other people have probably been on other webinars that have dealt with this specific topic. We try to take a little bit more general and overall comprehensive view to drill down here at the end of this presentation into the individual workplace. But one of what we're going to be discussing is how adopting new technology is vital and also post-pandemic. There's a lot of technology out there. How do you run that technology and not let it run you? And then we're going to get a little bit into a deep dive of what we call click and mortar versus brick and mortar, and that will specifically relate to some of retail and interior design showrooms and other things like that. And then finally, Emily will finish up with workplace of the future and what it looks like. Next slide. So what's important, we believe, is really approaching connectivity and new technology platforms. You can see on the right-hand side, we're going to cover a few different topics, where the industry expertise is headed. I know some people are probably taking advantage of cutting-edge events online. We'll talk a little bit about that, how that's shifting. We'll talk a little bit about the industry in general, and then we'll talk about some paradigm shifters, and we'll start to get into, through our platform of the Art of Construction, we've been able to interview some of these folks on our Art of Construction podcasts. We've had about 380,000 unique listens. So we would encourage you to listen to those if any of them are interesting to you or maybe provide value to your practice. So we'll talk a little bit about our construction, Enscape, obviously, who sponsors this particular webinar, BIMsmith, Hypar, TestFit, Penciler and Urban Sim Assignar. And then we won't dive too deep into delivery methods, new delivery methods, but we do want to mention that as well too, because we think that that will have incredible ramifications on the industry. I know a lot of folks have probably seen the new standards and social distancing, working distancing, things that are happening on work sites. So where is the industry headed and your area of expertise headed? We're finding it's a little bit different for each industry. Retail has its own challenges right now. Entertainment definitely has its own challenges. Shopping has been disrupted other than online platforms. Architecture, engineering, construction, everybody that I know seems to be busy and then said they actually are busier than they've been before. But we'll see how that continues as we move forward into the future. So we said what we've realized is that connectivity is queen or king. And so I imagine a lot of you are, we're on GoToMeeting today, but a lot of folks are using Zoom, a lot of people using Microsoft Teams and other platforms. I don't know if everybody else is like me, but it seems like at the end of the day, I go home, I lay in bed, and I feel like I still have earmuffs on because I've been on Zoom calls all day long. But the good news is that if you're able to work remote, a lot of your workflow has been hopefully seamless. So talking a little bit about cutting edge events. As everybody probably knows already, American Institute of Architects, the convention was going to be in Los Angeles this year. That was canceled. It is not going to be rescheduled. Digital Built Week, which I'm not sure if everybody knows about that. The Digital Built Environment Institute puts on conferences all over the world. Last year's was in Seattle, and that is actually where a few of the connections were made for Art of Construction to meet and interview the people that you'll hear about later. This year it's going to be in San Diego, but it's kind of hard to read with the COVID-19 update. It looks like it may be in jeopardy as well too. So in the meantime, you should look for local events or virtual online events. USGBC, which looks like the national convention still may be on. It's still trying to be determined. But the Rocky Mountain Green Virtual Summit, which is actually the Colorado chapter, and all the panelists here are based out of Denver, that is still going on. And in fact, it will be happening tomorrow and Friday virtually. So you're able to attend the sessions, get your USGBC lead credits that you need for renewal. And then IIDA also offered one, I think it was last week, and it was actually on disruption in the workplace and business operations, and it was for very knowledgeable interior designers who were speaking from their homes about what they were experiencing in their practices, and it was pretty fun and exciting because there were a lot of people moving through there when the webcams were on. So mom talking to children who had homework questions and things like that. So it brought like a really nice sense of reality to the situation. So architecture, engineering, and construction trends. Everybody already knows about BIM. Hopefully you're using Revit, ArchiCAD, or another platform like that. Real-time rendering and virtual reality has absolutely become crucial. Hopefully you were there before the pandemic hit because it's made virtual presentations possible with clients even in town. I think firms that had an advantage were the firms that had this technology in place because they were working either out of state, out of region, out of country. And so Enscape has been, in particular, has been a huge advantage to those firms. I know we use it on our projects as well in the Art of Construction. There's other software as well too that is being introduced, and it's been around for a while, Bluebeam, but that has allowed virtual redlining, shop drawings, things like that to happen online. And then one thing that we're really not going to cover, but it seems to be a trend, especially here in the Denver area, is a lot of inspections are being allowed to happen virtually, where if you have connectivity in an iPad or iPhone, and it depends on the project type, the inspector will be able to accompany you on the site visit and look at specific things on site. And the final thing is just virtual, I'm sorry, not virtual, but modular construction. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So one thing is a particular interest of me, and hopefully it will be to you, is paradigm shifters in the industry. And so up on the left, you have art of construction. You've got Enscape. BIMsmith is a parametric object modeler. Hypar, which is computer generative design. And then two companies, TestFit.io and UrbanSim and Penciler, and they allow you to do site fits quickly with UrbanSim and Penciler really having some level of, I guess I would call it sort of a development feasibility. And then finally, Assignar, which is a local Denver company that is helping manage construction management workflow and construction site workflow. So the Art of Construction, which I'm the executive director, and Scott Hicken, who you'll hear in a minute, is our executive producer and executive director for the podcast and other things that we do. But we host live events. We provide architectural services. We also provide development and real estate services. And the pictures that you see up on this slide, one is our founder, Devin Tilley, is really the visionary for Art of Construction. And he was interviewing Steve Burrows, who was the keynote speaker at Digital Built. And Steve, if you don't know him, absolutely fascinating individual who worked for Arup at one point and runs his own consulting business. And he worked on the Apple headquarters and Olympic Games and several other things. But his talk was about it's a great time to be alive in construction now with all the digital tools available. The other gentleman that you see with the beard is Ben Gluns of BIMsmith, and I'll chat with you a little bit about him here in a little bit. Then Enscape, our sponsor. And so we just chose two kind of realistic renderings. One, I'm not sure the location, but I loved it. Thought it looked like maybe it was South Beach, Miami. And so you can go sort of this sort of richness of entire overall projects down to the interiors level. And just the richness of the rendering of the textures, the fabrics, the luminescence off of it. And as all of you who use Enscape know, it is unbelievably easy to use. I mean, the entry level barrier is incredibly low. And here we go to BIMsmith. So BIMsmith is a parametric object modeling platform. And what they do is they actually charge the manufacturer to be hosted on the site. They come in, they build incredible parametric objects that work seamlessly with your software, whether it be Revit, ArchiCAD. And the latest thing I think that was exciting to me, and I just heard about it on the IIDA webinar, is that they have added PPG paints. And so it's completely free from the consumer side. But with this, you're able to come in and take paints and not only just paint colors, but paint sheens and textures. So like eggshell, flat, gloss, satin, and then put that into your model, and then Enscape can render that very realistically, and it's absolutely amazing. So if you've not checked out BIMsmith, you should go in and look at them. Next one's Hypar. Hypar is a computer generative design platform. Gentleman Ian Keogh and his partner Anthony Houck were the masterminds behind Dynamo. When they were working at Autodesk Revit, they left, started their own company. And Hypar, we did a podcast with them on AOC. Absolutely fascinating. They say no one should start from a blank canvas. And so this doesn't really replace the architect or designer, but what it does is it gives you some sort of framework and structure based on the parameters that you put into the model. So you can punch in FAR, density, setbacks, things like that. It doesn't actually create architecture, but it provides you a framework to then layer the architecture on top of it. So there's a question in there from me and Devin when we were talking to him is, does this replace architects? And you'll have to listen to the podcast to hear the answer. Short answer is no, but it's a great answer. Test fit. So a gentleman, Clifton Harness, out of Austin, Texas, created this, and it's very similar to HiPAR. However, it's specifically for multifamily. We've used it on multifamily projects in Colorado and Texas, and you're able to quickly, I guess the best way I told a client is that what used to take us a couple weeks actually happens in a day or a couple days, and we can investigate multiple options based on multifamily unit sizes and layouts and configurations. So I would also, if you're into multifamily, I would encourage you to visit TestFit's website. Then the next level up, we were fortunate enough to interview a gentleman named Paul Waddell, who's a professor at Cal Berkeley. Paul created a company called Urban Sim, and Urban Sim is also similar to TestFit. What he does is he's worked with several municipalities, so Toronto, Vancouver, San Francisco, Denver, and he has inputted their building codes and zoning codes into this software. And a developer or an architect can go in and very quickly, using Penciler, come in and see whether a project makes sense or not based on land costs and other things like that. He connects to the assessor's database as well. So once again, another great platform. And the final is Assignar. And so Assignar is, as I mentioned, a construction management and operations software. And it is an opportunity to really go in and track all those workflows. So if there are any GCs listening or any facilities managers, I would absolutely encourage you to go in and check this software out. So as I mentioned, the art of construction, Devin Tilley he calls himself the Tasmanian Devin and is a great interviewer. It really comes in and gets the best out of folks when we chat with them. And so, like I say, I would encourage you to listen to the Art of Construction if you get a chance. We've interviewed everybody from GCs all the way up to some of these cutting and leading edge companies that we just went through their slides. So this is really the only place that we'll cover offsite construction. But there is a bi-monthly series that occurs through Art of Construction and Modular SureSite, and we interview leaders in the offsite construction industry, and that includes both modular and panelization. And we focus on different parts. A gentleman yesterday focused on the entire process and how modular works. He does things all the way from single-family homes all the way up to resort communities. Gentleman coming up next Tuesday, May 12th, Steve Duguay, is, I guess, a cabling guy who does basically runs modular cabling and integrates new technology within those actual modules. So if that interests you, please Google us and join us for that webinar as well. This is pre-COVID. 19. So this is a thing that we did with a gentleman, Charlie Chupp, out of Fading West. And Fading West is a development company that also became a developer that is now looking to become a modular factory builder. And so Charlie was here just walking us through the process, and we had a really nice turnout here at the Mountain View Window and Door Showroom. And then the next slide will show you post-COVID. So this was the one that I was mentioning, Modular Design Speak, with Will Henschel of 359 Development. Great talk, and you can kind of see a portion of the people on the right side, but we're all attending it just like we're attending this webinar here. So as everybody knows, you just you pick your battles and you move on and you use different technologies and still accomplish the same thing. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Scott Hicken.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and thank you, Matt, for that amazing content so far. So For my portion of this webinar, I will be talking about what we call click and mortar. And click and mortar refers to a business model that incorporates online operations alongside its offline operations. So strategy emphasizes the need to adapt to changing conditions, and especially right now, click and mortar seems to be a very feasible business model for the future, is how to save some of the real life spaces and how we can incorporate that into an online way. We do that through art of construction, through what we call digital and virtual experiences. And so I'll be going in and talking about our digital and virtual experiences, which we create using 3D scanning technology, LiDAR, and photogrammetry, which really, in this post-COVID-19 world, are going to be able to dramatically reduce the amount of site visits and on-site workers, also allow for more remote project collaboration, and also be a tool for marketing and retail in a way that's all online and people don't have to come and see anything in person. And it also creates a faster and more efficient workflow for architecture, engineering, construction, and interior professionals. So there's two different types, 3D scanning technology, LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. That's a remote sensing method that uses light in the form of a pulse laser. So this is really laser scanning. That will be the photo on the bottom. The other type is photogrammetry. So that's just the science of taking photographs and stitching them together into a model. Usually those photographs are taken with a 360-degree camera. And on the photo on the top, you will see an example of that. And so there's a lot of different uses for this stuff, but today I'm going to focus on how architects, engineering, and construction and design professionals are using these 3D scans to collaborate on projects remotely. As I said, the amount of on-site walks and the amount of site personnel needed is dramatically reduced. It just creates a way more efficient online workflow where we don't need to have people in person the entire time. And also, there is interior design, product and appliance showrooms and retail spaces that can use these 3D scans to let customers virtually interact with the space in a way that actually can be even more powerful than on in person a lot of the time. And it even allows you to make design decisions. If you're an architect, you can bring your client into a space virtually. You can have a meeting like this and go over it together. And it also allows you to find all easily relevant info in a way that is really powerful. And so here are some of the cameras that you can use to do this. So on the right, you have, these are the cheapest options. These are 360-degree cameras that you hold in your hand and you walk around a space. So those are only going to be accurate within 4 to 8%. So they're not good if you need actual hardcore, detailed technical documentation of the space as far as measurements, as far as the size of the space. But it is going to be good if you need just a visual representation of the space in a way that you can really easily get. You just hold those in your hand, you walk around a space, you're able to upload them and have them the next day. Those run around $200 to $400. And then there is the Matterport in the middle. That's the one that we have been using. It's accurate within 1%. It's a much larger, fully more capable 360-degree camera that you set down in a space. It does its thing. Then you set it down in another space, and you do that throughout the entire building, and you get an accurate model within 1%. So this is going to be good if you need approximate measurements that maybe aren't exactly down to the finest detail exact, but if you need measurements from an as-built, if you need to generally measure a room, some furniture, some design layout that you have, this will give you accurate within 1%. Those run anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, depending on the model. And then on the right, that's when we really get into laser scanning. So that's the Leica BLK 360. That's accurate within 0.1%. That is where you really, really get the highly technical data that's used a lot on commercial projects where you really have no margin for error. And for the purpose of this, I'll be focusing on the Matterport because that is one that Art of Construction has been using, and I've been working with builders, architects, interior designers to help use this tool to create virtual experiences. So we call this the virtual experience economy at Art of Construction. As you can see from this picture, I don't think a lot of people realize virtual reality has actually been around for a while. This picture is from the 1950s. So it's not a new technology per se, but it's never been mass produced. It's never been integrated into businesses, into mass commercial life on Earth. But now, obviously, in these past decades, it really has made its way thanks to companies like Enscape, who have worked really hard to incorporate these virtual and digital experiences of virtual reality into our actual everyday workflow. So that's why we call it the virtual experience economy, because we think it's a whole new economy, and Art of Construction has been working really hard to show people how you can use this to your advantage. So we've developed this offering by working with a window and door company here in Denver called Mountain View Window and Door. It's how we've sort of tested this product and figured out how to integrate it into people's workflow. So as you can see on the right, those are two of their showrooms, one in Denver and one in Grand Junction. So we did scans of their showrooms, and over the past 2 years, they've been using those showrooms as another sales tool and also as an education tool for their teammates to collaborate on. So we have some sales guys at Mountain View Window and Door who've actually had experiences where they haven't heard from a potential client for a long period of time. Oh, what happened to that person? And then, hey, they walk in the door and they're ready to sign paperwork and ready to move forward with the project. And the sales guy might be like, wait, but how did you know what this is? How did you know what that is? We haven't had this conversation in the showroom yet. And they go, oh, we didn't need to have that conversation. We worked with our architect every time we needed to specify something, see what a product looked like, get the feel for it. We were just using your virtual experience. So this was how we test drove it as far as using it for a commercial retail space, and how you can also use it to collaborate with team members and educate yourselves on your products. But we've also been doing it for Mountain View and Door projects with builders and architects and designers. And so this is a sample project. So I'll give you guys a second to sort of read this testimonial. And as you read it, as you look at the right, this is a dollhouse view of an as-built construction model that we did for a builder here in Denver named Frank with FJ Progressive Builders. And so these models done during construction, we do them right after the windows and doors go in, pre-installation. It shows you what's behind the walls, but then you're also able to tag it up. So it's a virtual punch list. So if you see those dots all over the model, you see different colored dots. Those were made by different trades on the project and the homeowner. And so in this case, they were marking up, this appliance is going to go here, this room is going to go here. Hey, Frank, make sure we get this measurement done here. And so none of these trades have to go to the project anymore. The subs don't have to go do site walks. The GC doesn't have to do nearly as many site walks. Is basically the main idea here. And what's really important that we've discovered here is that once it's kind of integrated into a workflow in this way, where, you know, previously GCs have taken videos of projects and just tried to send people the video. For larger projects, I know they have sort of live streamed current videos as well, but those require large file sizes. Those require a lot of technical capabilities for a computer to be able to process that. Since this is all in the cloud, it's really easy to access. And so a framer, a plumber who might not be really technologically savvy with this stuff is still able to just, you send them the link, they click on it, and they're able to go in and do all their pre-planning. So not only does it reduce, it gets rid of some site visits completely, but other site visits that you still need to go to, you've looked at the entire space beforehand, you've marked it up. So when you go, it's kind of like right more to the point as far as what you need to do on the site, which obviously during COVID-19 and post-pandemic, when we're trying to reduce the amount of physical contact in close quarters, this is just that virtual way for all the subs, the trades, the GC, the architect to be able to plan out a project. And then you're also able to take this model and create a floor plan. You're able to create point cloud file that's able to be accessed and imported into Revit, AutoCAD, etc. And so there's lots of capabilities of how you can take these as-built scans and just use them to replace measurements, streamline all your documentation. It's all done in there. And so it's quicker, it's faster, and it's safer because we're all staying in our homes as we do it. And so click and mortar, like we said, a lot of retail spaces that are used to be, you know, brick and mortar, the phrase we all know and love of going into a shop, seeing their product on the floor. These 3D models are able to allow click and mortar businesses or retail spaces to really have new uses of the space that you couldn't even do in person, and new ways to present marketing technical data. And also trade shows and exhibition displays can live on virtually long after the physical event, increasing the lifespan and ROI of the setup, which we'll show you. And so this is Design Right Studios that here in Denver that we did a scan for to get their showroom online, just to give you an example of what their websites looks like, how they're directing their audience to the virtual experience of their showroom, which we're about to show you. And so this is the virtual experience of Design Right Studios that I did. As the video plays and it walks through the space, you'll see the dollhouse view here, and then it goes into the model. So a really powerful tool here for retail spaces and to guide clients through it that might not want to do a bunch of clicking. You're able to create a highlight reel. Two things I'll just point out in this space. We're using a Matterport and a 3D scanner. You have to be very specific about where you angle the scan from, and that's going to give the certain viewpoint you have. So I made sure to do it within these furniture spaces to give designers, to give clients that total freedom to get a 360-degree view all the way around the room. And then also one really more powerful new tool that Matterport just added that's really important for you all to know about is the measurement capability. So why do people still want to go in person? A lot of times it's to measure something, to see how big it really is, how it's going to work in the space. So as you can see, Matterport allows you the ability to measure something really easily, really fluidly, where it locks onto certain geometric lines for you. And if you see at the top, it gives you the entire measurement. And so here you see me measuring the width and height of this table. And this is a way that's really easy, and it allows architects, interior designers, and even their clients to go in and actually spec a product themselves in a way that's not hard and actually even fun. And so finally, my last example here to show you guys, this is Oknoplast, a Polish window company. This is their trade show display at International Builder Show this year. Clearly, it was amazing. They spent a lot of money to make it look absolutely fantastic. Oknoplast is making their way into the American market from Europe currently, and Art of Construction is working with them on marketing to help them make that happen. So I just want to leave you with this example. We know how much companies spend on all of this stuff. With this virtual experience, this trade show display is going to live on forever. Even if there isn't an IBS next year, which we hope there is, we hope this is all done by the end of this year. But in case, future events gets canceled, hey, you still have a virtual reality version of your trade show display, and you can embed media. And so this is just a really cool marketing thing I'll leave you with. Here you see a video popping out where Devin, our AOC visionary, did a product demonstration in front of that product, actually there in real life. And then afterwards, Oknoplast is able to tag all of the products with that video. And so in a way, it's even a more
Scott, I think we might have lost your audio then.
Yeah, I think we just lost your audio, Scott. So thanks for that presentation on LiDAR scanning. If you're not currently using that technology on your projects and with your clients, you really should be. Really allows you to, I guess the key word is documentation, and avoid errors and omissions as well. So, overwhelmed yet? This is the part where we talk about how do you run technology and not let it run you. So I looked at this image and I'm like, okay, I've been where this woman's been. Usually it was all-nighters in college, or it was at a critique, or it was trying to get ready for a client and you're trying to squeeze everything in at the last minute and make it perfect. So most of you, know how to use a virtual meeting because you're on this. Hopefully you're doing virtual presentations online because clients may not be able to meet with you right now. But I think the important point we wanted to bring up with this particular slide was you have this virtual workflow that's occurring and you have all these procedures and platforms and you're just getting bombarded with even more information than you may have been. Plus, you don't really have control over who's doing what unless you have a good workflow process. You may be insourcing it, so it's all in-house, but people are working out of their houses, or you may be outsourcing it. So you're working with somebody overseas, you're working in India, China, you're working in Romania, or you're working in another state or country as well too with virtual workflow coming in. And so the key point here is if you're really coordinating multiple parties, and then also new technology that we just presented you with, is you really have to have a really tight QA/QC process. And I've seen some examples of that from firms. Able Design Group is a great example of that. here in Denver, where they have a process that they send out to all their folks to make sure that their drawings are moving very seamlessly through the process. But I would encourage you, if you don't have that, have a really good QA/QC discussion with your folks and make that happen. With that, I will turn it over to our final presenter, Emily with Steelcase.
Thanks, Matt. So thanks everyone for joining and hanging in there with us. The question on everyone's mind is, what does the workplace of the future look like post-pandemic? And spoiler alert, I don't have the magic answer, and I don't think any single person or company does. Those that feel like they know exactly what it looks like are most likely basing it off of their own opinions, experiences, and company culture, and that's simply because we don't have much else to base it off of right now. So all the things that you're reading, take with a grain of salt and challenge them. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the noise, give yourself some grace and just know that you're not alone. I think that we all are. I know I am. But many of the articles out there contradict each other, and we're seeing a full spectrum too on our side. On any given situation or scenario, one client will be on one side and another will take a completely different approach. And that's okay, because this is a really challenging problem. It's a first for almost everyone, and it changes sometimes weekly, if not daily. So I don't know about you, but these past 6 weeks have felt like 6 months to me. I can say that at Steelcase, we've been gathering information, iterating, developing responses, all to have the situation change suddenly, and then we have to pause and rethink, sometimes even starting over. And it feels like we're back in design school, having just gone through a critique and being told that we might as well just put it all in the trash and begin again. But at least design school prepared us for something. Hopefully a few can relate to that. But the reality is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and I'm going to jump into exactly why that is and tee up some of the complexities so that you can get a feel for why there's so much noise out there right now. So this is a multifaceted and complex issue with so many things that can affect any response. This is really more my opinion, but regardless of what I've read, it seems that these 4 themes keep coming up. Depending on where you are or what you've heard or what you've read, you might want to cross out one of these and add something else that you think is a theme. I think that's totally valid. But if I were to put this into 4 buckets, I'd say it kind of falls into location. So I'm going to put that in the lens of building and property management, behavior, focusing on employee experience and etiquettes, the physical things that we're coming into contact with, so that's components, surfaces, and materials, and then the digital side of things, that virtual connection and tech integration. So in terms of building and property management, here's what people are talking about. I'm going to read through these in case that's a little small for you on your screen. Extensive cleaning regimens in public spaces, shared spaces, restrooms, and elevators. It seems pretty clear that this has to happen, but it's sending cleaning costs through the roof. We have some clients who are looking at cleaning their campus 3 times a day. They're at 10% of their workforce, trying to bring in only essential people, and their cleaning costs have gone through the roof. So there are some major impacts to that. But it has to happen. But the one thing that we're trying to consider is, will any of the physical distancing efforts matter? Will any of these cleaning regimens matter if people have to get into an elevator that hasn't been cleaned, or if they're touching a shared space? And so this really has to be a pretty holistic approach from these building and property managers, and it's not an easy task. The next would be automated and motion censored systems integrated throughout the building. If you're working on a new building and designing it, this is probably a no-brainer. It's worth the investment. But existing buildings, how easy are those actually really to retrofit? And is it worth the cost, or can you just clean things more in the meantime? Social and physical distancing measures enforced by building staff. I'm actually going to pull from a blog I read by Bethany DeLine, who's a designer at HDR in NY. She posted a blog on LinkedIn that showed one thing that she doesn't miss in quarantine is that she used to have to wait outside of her building for an extended period of time to get into the elevator, and that sometimes the elevator line would stretch out and all the way around the building to the end of the block. It seems pretty hard to imagine us being able to do something like that anywhere in the near future. But if you're a building management company, how do you control people like that and encourage the proper behaviors? I think that's really challenging. And then upgrading building systems to prioritize air circulation and filtering. That's major implications again. That's pretty similar to installing motion censored systems throughout. I think that if you're working on a new building, that's a no-brainer, but from a cost and interior construction standpoint, that's not as simple as it sounds. So let's jump into employee experience and etiquettes and what we're seeing there. A lot of people are talking about dedicating paths of travel and direction of travel. I think one of the devil's advocate questions here is, how do you enforce this and make sure employees actually do this? And I think that a lot of these in terms of behavior really are scalable with the size of your company. So if you have 50 people in your company, it might be a little bit easier to control. But if you scale that to a company-wide etiquette for an entire campus, it gets much more complicated. We're talking about phasing workforces into groups each day of the week. What people are asking is, does this impact the team etiquettes that we just got used to? They say it takes about 60 days to create, fully create and embrace a habit. And we just kind of got used to working from home and getting together with our teams virtually. And now we're gonna, implement a whole new plan. And what does that do to our groups? And our employees are getting kind of stressed out. So social and physical distancing measures enforced, staggered printing, lunch breaks, meeting time. This is a good story where we've seen clients on either end of the spectrum, especially in terms of printing. Some clients are saying that they're going to add printing stations throughout so that less people are around a printer. And then we have other clients who are saying they're going to remove all of their printers and have one person dedicated to printing projects and documents and then delivering them to the people who requested them. And I think that's really interesting to see both sides of that spectrum. And then giving each employee cleaning supplies to keep at their desk and having a cleaning schedule and requiring employees to participate. How do you manage that, right? Again, that one's pretty scalable for the size of the company, but it's a valid question and concern. Can employees help us manage what is considered a new normal? So going to physical components, surfaces, and materials, we're talking a lot about this one at Steelcase. So people are looking at reconfiguring meeting spaces and workspaces to ensure 6 feet of separation between individuals. That works really, really well right now. We're at 25 to 50% of the workforce returning, so that makes sense. You can pull furniture out of conference rooms and put it away to encourage that 6-foot physical distancing. You can phase your workforce and all that stuff. But what does that mean when we get to 100%? And how do we actually manage that when 100% of our workforce is returning? And is it as plausible? Is it as possible? Is it as easy as what it is when it's only 25 to 50% of the people in the space? Adding separation cues like screens or panels to serve as a reminder and encourage distancing. This is a great one. It's fairly cost effective in some cases, but do you choose hard or soft materials? We need to understand the difference between bacteria and viruses because they're not the same. So if something is antibacterial, will it stop the spread of a virus? And there's not a ton of information out there. And these implications are effective as are they as effective as people regularly washing their hands when there are dozens of touch points and contact surfaces in the room? Some people are wondering if it makes sense to add more surfaces at all because that's just something that you have to manage and clean. Standardizing antimicrobial materials that are bleach cleanable and easy to wipe down. That sounds great, but a lot of us are considering what that would mean for creating a super virus. Are we setting ourselves up to fail in 2 to 3 years because everything's antimicrobial and we've created something even bigger than the problem we're facing right now? And then adding removing shared desks and hoteling. This is another one where we're seeing a huge spectrum. Some employees and companies are saying that they will never share desks again and that all of their hoteling will be removed. While others are saying that they're going to share everything now because they think that it will encourage cleaning etiquettes and you'll assume nothing's clean, so you'll clean everything. I think that both are pretty valid there as well. So virtual connection and tech integration. What we're hearing is people talk about now installing sensors to capture data on room usage, behavior, and maybe even employee temperatures when you walk into a building. I have to tell you, 5 weeks ago, that would have seemed like a complete invasion of privacy. And now, for whatever reason, that's starting to resonate and make sense because do we have a better way of controlling the spread of this virus? I don't know. And designing rooms that create better experience for virtual connection. I think this is a really positive one. We're starting to realize that when you're at home virtually, you're a little bit disconnected if everybody's in a room. So can we think about that experience in our conference rooms and our meeting rooms so that the people who are at home feel like they're in the room and have a better experience? Using room schedulers to understand if a space has been used, but can they be adapted to know if a space has been cleaned? A lot of times our room scheduler, our room wizard will remind you that you only have 5 minutes left. Can that reminder say, and also please clean this room? That would be interesting. And then having a live map that allows you to see what spaces are available without having to walk through your building. We have that right now, that live map kind of component. But what we talked about is it would be great to know if a space has been used at all that day, because allegedly, if not, it's clean. And if you're just looking for a clean space and you don't care what the technology is in it, you could use Live Map to identify that. And I think that's a really great way that technology is kind of creating different experiences for us, or the ways that we can tweak technology, if you will, to better support us. So in terms of navigating what's next, Steelcase has come out with a response, and even with all the complexities, people need to know what their options are, and we're all trying to kind of approach that, whether you're on the A&D side, maybe you're a dealer partner, or you're a manufacturer like us. Because the reality is that many of us are going back to the office, and very soon. In Denver, it's happening a lot sooner than many of us imagined. So Steelcase decided to produce a guide. It's full of suggestions and considerations, but we realize that it's not perfect. So like everyone, we're basing it off of what we know now. So the website's down at the bottom. It's steelcase.com/post-COVID. But they really kind of start defining it into a few key themes, one of them being division, density, and geometry. But we're going to jump to the next slide here, and I think the main one, and we've seen this before with other people, is now, near, and far. And this seems to be the most relevant to everyone, because we need to look at what we can do right now. We have implications coming up in the very near future, but then what are we doing in 2 to 3 years, and what solutions are we providing to make sure that we're prepared if this ever happens again? So go ahead and jump to the next slide. I think that where the complexity really comes in, and this is a pretty simple graph, but I think that what you see here is that the building and property management solution for now is not the same as FAR. It can't be, right? And so what we're seeing is people having to come up with not just one plan, but multiple plans. And that's where you start to see conflicting opinions and multiple responses. And that's why some of this is a little hard to grasp, and it's hard to read because you don't really know what to do. So our recommendation to everyone is just to really start with a conversation. Ask yourself what problem you're trying to solve. Where are you located? What state are you in? Because that matters. How big is the company? Do they have multiple offices in multiple states? So that's an added complexity. And what's your current culture like? How can technology support you right now? What are you looking to do in the FAR to make sure that technology is supporting you? Those are kind of all the different components. So that guide kind of helps you address a lot of these different things. But I think some of the best advice I've heard is to surround yourself with different perspectives. If you're coming up with a solution on your own, chances are you're basing it off of your own experiences, because that's just all we have right now. Make sure you're iterating. There is absolutely no precedent for us to base a lot of these considerations off of. So just know that your first solution might not be your last solution. And when you get to one that feels good, your state might change guidelines and you might have to redevelop something. And then the last one would be just to understand how quickly it's changing and to stay patient with yourself and everyone involved. I think that the difference that I've heard between this and what anything that's worth comparing to this challenge that we're in right now is that people have come together in a different way than ever before. And I think that that's really, really valuable. And there's no better group to solve this problem than A&D. Like, that's what we've been taught to do, and we are set up so well to figure this one out, and I have full confidence that we'll be able to do it. But one of the questions that keeps coming up right after the question of what does the future workplace look like is, why would we return, and do we really have to? We've been working from home for, I've been working from home for 5 weeks now, I think, and everybody's wondering, do we really need the office? And I think the answer, in my opinion, is yes, and the reason for it is Propinquity. And to be honest, I had never heard what that word was. It's on the screen there with a website for this article. Steelcase partnered up with Christopher Good to write this. And this was kind of at the beginning of the stages, and I think that it's more prevalent now than ever. But Propinquity it's proximity, if you will. So one of the quotes from the article that I'll read to you is, it says, as your team start returning to the office, consider ways to celebrate the reason this place exists. It is no longer just a place to sit at a desk. Our workplace must now become a place to connect and to reinforce our culture, to share in our propinquity, and to serve all of the work experiences that are better than any individual desk could ever be. So I don't think that the office is going away. That's a personal opinion. I think there are others who feel complete opposite, and that's all right. But I hope that Propinquity helps us return. So thanks for the time.
Thanks, Emily. That was great. So we just want to finish up with just a few observations. We know that was a lot of information to absorb, a little bit of an informational fire hose. But one of the things that we want to share with you is that as architects, designers, creators, if you will, we really understand the problem-solving process. That's what we were trained to do. That's what we learned in school. It's what we've been practicing every day. And we love to solve problems. Our caution to you would be, don't just jump in and create the solution immediately, because a lot of people are asking for the answer. But pause and make sure that we as a team are really asking all the right questions to define that problem before we jump in and create the right solution for the right problem. And this is going to require sharing knowledge between all trades and professions, and it's really going to be an expert team. There's going to be people maybe from medical background who are going to be on your team who maybe have not been on that team before, unless you've been designing a hospital. But I think there's going to be a permeability of other disciplines into other building types. And then once again, new vulnerability is the word or the phrase of the day. No one has the answer. I think you'll be constantly asked for it. And this just reminds you kind of the three kinds of knowledge, right? There's really what you know, which is pretty small. Then there's what you don't know, which is obviously a much bigger thing. Then there's the final piece, which is everything else is what you don't know, you don't know. And that's really the biggest realm and opportunity for growth, both personally and professionally. So don't be afraid to ask and to admit that you don't know the answer. So with that philosophy, I started to think, who's the wisest person that I've probably been exposed to? And I thought of Yoda. And so Yoda is going to ask the question here. I found a thing online, the Yoda Speak Generator. And so any questions are there?
Wonderful. Love a bit of Yoda on a webinar. Thank you so much, Matt and Scott and Emily, for sharing your great presentations. We do have a few questions, so let's open up the Q&A quickly. We've got a couple of minutes left. A few people, Scott, were asking about the 3D camera that you were using. Would you be able to remind people what the name of the camera that you used was?
Hey, Scott, do we have your audio?
Oh, let me see if we can. Scott, you there?
Say
I've
it.
just unmuted you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There you are.
There you are.
Sorry about that. Got my audio back. So the question was what camera we were using?
Yes, the 3D camera.
That is the Matterport Pro 2, which is the most recent Matterport camera. As I said, it's right in the middle between laser scanning, which is really hardcore accuracy, and 360 degree, which is going to be 4 to 8% accuracy. And it is about $3,000 to $4,000, depending on which model you get. But yeah, that is the base level of Matterport camera that they offer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. A question for you, Matt. Do you think that virtual reality will have an important role in the post-pandemic AEC industry?
You know, I really do. Already, and for some of the reasons mentioned in the webinar, is it really allows you to connect with your client virtually. We actually had a conversation around another event that's going to happen called the Festival of Digital Construction. And we talked to Overland Architects in San Antonio today, and they were talking about working with a client remotely at a ski resort in Utah, and how they've been able to make incredible progress. And they really haven't even visited the site other than the very first time. So I think that's one thing. Second thing is, and Enscape will know more about this, but I think people have been using it in interesting ways to create hospitals virtually to respond to pandemic numbers and other things. So yes, a resounding yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Pankil said the Yoda Speak Generator was awesome. So I think that was the highlight of the presentation for some. Love
right.
that. Another question, Emily, this one's for you. Do you think that companies will need to consider increasing the size of their office spaces in order to easily enable social distancing between workers, or is this just not feasible because of costs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's on everyone's mind. The easy answer is I think it depends on the industry and the company itself. in some ways, but if you look at it in the now, near, and far, I definitely think that right now we need to increase square footage per person. We can do that because we're phasing our workforce. In the far, it'll be really interesting to see if employees try to encourage more work from home etiquette so that they don't have to do that, because cost and cash are going to be a really big issue for companies coming up. So I definitely think we'll see some companies kind of go in that direction and try to reduce their square footage because they have this newfound work from home etiquette that they can employ throughout their entire organization. And then I think that there are other companies who are hurting a lot right now trying to manage digital work, and they're really excited to get back into the office. So, you know, if they have the means, they'll increase space, and if not, they'll try to find a way to manage with what they have.
Wonderful, thanks, Emily. Matt, another question for you. Should I push my firm into BIM during this time? If so, what are some motivations during this time to do that?
Another short answer, yes. You should definitely do BIM. You're just going to see the application of BIM continue to grow. It's something where each one of those parametric objects or wall surfaces or things have specific parameters with them. And so as we mentioned, like BIMsmith, you know, is starting to create stuff where you're able to come in and render those things more realistically. So that will enable you to drive more work to your firm. So yeah, short answer is yes.
Brilliant, thank you very much. All right, well, I think that is it for today's webinar. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Emily, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us today. And thank you at home for watching this webinar. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us. Before you leave, there is a short survey that will pop up on your screen that gives you the chance to take out a free trial of Enscape, our real-time rendering tool that was mentioned during the webinar. And you can also provide your feedback, which of course we'd love to hear. So if you could complete that, we'd really appreciate it. I should also mention as well that you'll receive a copy of the recording in the next 24 hours, and I'll also share with you a couple of extra useful links that we mentioned during this webinar, so keep an eye out for that email as well. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you can join us for another Enscape webinar soon. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gemma, for hosting us.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, everyone.